Western humanity is the biggest scam that was sold to black people. And get this, I'm going to explain this because I've always said I made a couple of videos a lot of times talking about how Western humanity was never about helping black people, but making it more convenient for Westerners to feel entitled to get away with abusing us and taking zero accountability. And I'm going to explain this by using the story of my autistic brother here in Sweden. For most of you that have read about Sweden, according to the Western analysis about Sweden, Sweden is known for being a noble country, a humanitarian country, very caring people, very generous people. They are one of the fewest nations that have managed to uphold human rights. And if you know one thing about Sweden, they have this their typical tradition that they do every December where they claim how they give Nobel Peace Prize every December out. But then let's talk for a second. I want you to pause and read the story of Emmanuel. This is a country, a Western country that decides to say, you know what, we're going to create a business by taking black children, black disabled people, force them into institutions, label them as criminals because we want to hide what we're doing. Go out there, call themselves humanitarians, call themselves Nobel people, pretend to be some quiet, shy people that cannot hurt a fly. And guess what? The Western humanitarians, and when I'm talking of the Western humanitarians, I'm talking of the UN, Amnesty, BBC, CNN, WHO, your opinion. Guess what they're doing about Sweden? Nothing. They're still pushing out that narrative that Swedish people are humanitarians, even though there's stories out there where Sweden is openly and publicly violating human rights. Now, let's ask ourselves these questions as black people. Do you think if there was an African country that decided to say, you know what, we want to be abusing, we want to take advantage of white disabled people that are migrating to this African country. We want to lock them up as criminals. We want to punish them for showing signs and symptoms of their disability. We want to deprive them from their families. We want to torture them every time they show us signs and symptoms of their disabilities. And these white families came out and started condemning this African country. Do you think that the Western humanitarians like the UN, Amnesty, BBC, CNN, WHO, they would have been just quiet and say, oh, let's not talk about this African country. Let's keep telling the whole world that this African country is a quiet country, it's a humanitarian country, they can't hurt a fly, they keep to themselves, they don't know how to hurt anybody. Do you think that that's what would have happened? That's what is currently happening right here, right now in Sweden. According to the Western statistics, Swedes are known for being a humanitarian country, shy people, cannot hurt a fly, keep to themselves, do not like confrontation, very humanitarian, Nobel people. That's all what the Western humanitarians are telling us about Sweden. But now the question is, what about the Africans? What about the immigrants? What about the Muslims? What about people, vulnerable people that have migrated here to Sweden that are being abused? Western humanity does not talk about that. You think it's a coincidence that they don't bring out this dark side of Sweden? No, because it's the business here in Sweden. Our loved ones are forced into institutions. Our kids that we give birth to here in Sweden, African children have been given birth here in Sweden, are forced into foster care homes. They are being abused. They are being neglected. They are being all sorts of abusive things are going on in those places. But guess what? Those people are not being removed from those places because those places are making the money off of these people because those places have been prioritized. And a clear example is the story of Emmanuel. For those of you that have been following my family, you know that my family has been telling Emmanuel's story now for close to 6+ years that Emmanuel was sentenced in 2019 indefinitely as a criminal. In 25th of December 2020, that was the last time that Emmanuel saw any member of his family. So till date, as I'm making this video, Emmanuel has not laid eyes on any member of his family. And the question is why? According to the international law in the world, even if somebody is a criminal, are they not allowed to have visitation hours to see their loved ones? So why is Sweden depriving somebody that already has a disability that, according to you, let's assume that he's a criminal according to how the Swedish government has put him there? So not only is he a criminal for being born with a disability that he did not choose to have, another thing on top of that is that he's not allowed to be around his own family. And the question is why? Why is Sweden doing all of that? Because my family is publicly exposing the dark side of Sweden. So my family is documenting Emmanuel, putting it out there, showing the world what Sweden is doing to black disabled people. And guess what Sweden decides to do? Oh, they decide to go and say, you know what? We'll ban the family from seeing the boy if the family wants to go publicly. And guess what our Western humanitarians have done? They have dare not question Sweden. They have dare not open an investigation on Sweden. They have dare not ask Sweden that, excuse me, sweet, you don't get to take people based on their disability and use it against them. And then when their families want to speak up, you turn around and start using intimidative methods on their family. No, according to the Western humanity, Sweden is still a noble country. Sweden is still a humanitarian country, despite all the proof that is out there that Sweden is violating human rights on black people. And that is why, as a black person, I always say this: I cannot stand for Western humanity because it has never benefited the black man, but it has helped the white man feel entitled to torture the black man and take zero accountability. And like I say again, a good example is the story of Emmanuel here in Sweden. Let's ask ourselves this question as Africans, as black people. If a white person had to migrate to Africa today, and the white person came out and publicly on the media and said, oh, my disabled loved one was taken away from me, forced in an institution, called a criminal, being beaten and belted every time my disabled loved one shows signs and symptoms of his or her disability, and they have even banned me not to see my disabled loved one because I went publicly to share my story. Would UN, would BBC, would CNN, would WHO, would European Union, would all of them still be clapping for that African country? Will all of them still be preaching and trying to convince the whole world to look at that African country as, oh, it's a noble country, it's a humanitarian country, they can't hurt a fly, they keep to themselves, they don't know what it... Would the Western humanity do that? But that's what they're doing for Sweden. For 6+ years, my family has told the story of Emmanuel. And more families are out there talking. But what is the Western humanity doing about Sweden? They are not opening any investigation on Sweden. They are not there putting any pressure on Sweden to release those victims. They are only struggling to perfect the fake reputation of Sweden, because for them, when you are a Westerner and you go all out and violate the rights of non-Westerners, according to Western humanity, you are not violating human rights. You're just doing what your predecessors used to do to us. And that is why Sweden can openly violate human rights for this number of years on my family and still pretend to be a humanitarian country, and still pretend to be a noble country, and still pretend to be some people that are shy, hate confrontation, keep to themselves, very generous people, and they're still getting those titles because Western humanity is helping them preserve that title. Western humanity is helping them feel like you don't have to do the right thing, Sweden. We are not gonna hold you accountable for human abuse, Sweden. Even if the handwriting on the wall is crystal clear that you're violating human rights, just because it is Sweden doing all of it, okay, it's no violation of human rights. And that is why I've always said this as a black person, that Western humanity was the biggest scam that was sold to the black man. Because everything that Sweden has done to my family, I will say this openly, no African country will ever do this to a disabled person and still go out there and give a Nobel Peace Prize, and still go out there and claim to be some shy people, and still go out there and claim to be some humanitarians, and still go out there and want to teach humanity, and still go out there and want to be pretending like, oh, we're keeping to ourselves, we don't like confrontation. But that's exactly what Sweden is doing. Sweden is openly abusing black people, openly violating the rights of black people, openly practicing racism, but still turning around and claiming that they are humanitarians, claiming that they are noble people, claiming that they cannot hurt a fly, claiming that they are some shy people, and all what the Western humanitarians can say about Sweden is, that is Sweden. So that means we, the black people, are just some sort of collateral damage, just some sort of sacrificial lamb for the growth of Sweden. And that's why I've always said that I will never stop telling Emmanuel's story, because Emmanuel's story is not just about giving Emmanuel justice. It's also about educating the world about what is going on here in Sweden. But why is the Western so-called humanitarian mainstream media not talking about it? Why are they not putting out this dark side of Sweden? Why are they not educating the world about this dark side of Sweden? You know why? Because they are on board with Sweden. That is why Sweden keeps getting away with human abuse. That is why Swedish people keep getting entitled. That is why Swedish people can publicly abuse people and still pretend to be humanitarian, because the Western humanity was never about humanity. It was all about white supremacy. It was all about helping Westerners to feel entitled to relieve what their ancestors did to us over and over and over, and take zero accountability. And a good example that you can see in Sweden is the story of Emmanuel, which I said I will never stop telling his story. I always keep putting his story out there, because I want it to be out there, because I want to remind the world that you see some of these your Western top-notch super humanitarian countries, these people are even one of the worst people when it comes to violation of human rights. But the reason why you don't get to see it is because Western humanity has been helping to cover them up, painting them as this perfect human being, then shadowing the stories of their victims, And that is why the story of Emmanuel till date, he's still been abused in Sweden, and Sweden is still being a humanitarian country.